Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 244 of the Board Game Barrage podcast. I am your host, Neelan, and with me, as always, are my co-hosts, Mark and Kellen. Say hello.
Hey. Hello.
Prune juice.
Yes, exactly. Topic of the week, prune juice. This week on the show, actually, what we're going to be talking about is a little bit of a quick hit. We're going to get in and out with
I don't think it's called a quick hit.
Excuse me? Well, it's a quick hit. I was getting there.
Okay, all right.
Get in and out with a hot question.
Boo. Yeah, that was...
That's kind of... Well, you got to tease build up the anticipation. The listeners will get what they want later down the line.
Don't give it to them all up front.
If there's too much teasing, it's way too quick of a hit.
That's exactly. You want to make that hit last. Before we get there, we're going to be talking about the games that we've been playing this week. And this week, those games are going to be Bitoku, San Francisco, and Caesar's Empire. And let's kick it off right off the bat with Mark telling us about Bitoku.
Bitoku by German Milan and De Veer Games is a game that not only have I been looking forward to playing for a while, but I know Neelan had it as his third most anticipated Essen release all the way back on episode 194.
Wow, that's like a long time ago.
Yeah, crazy.
That's almost a year ago.
30 years ago.
So although it had been a little hard to find, at least in the U.S., I think, for a while, let's be honest, I was always going to trade for it, and that's, in fact, exactly how I got my hands on a copy in the recent LA-based Strategicon Mass Trade. A quick and perhaps, I'm hoping, funny story about that. This copy was actually Monique and Naveen's from Before You Play.
Oh, that's my copy.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm pretty sure I have, at some point, traded my copy to Monique and Naveen.
All right, well, I got it back. And in fact... If you want to trade back for it, I'm happy to do so, and you'll know why at the end of this episode.
Twice what I paid for it.
Right, there you go. So anyway, they recently released a Patreon-only video. This is, again, Before You Play Patreon-only video that I was privy to, where they talked about the games they were getting rid of and acquiring at the convention. I was, of course, going to watch no matter what because their stuff is always great, but I was excited to hear what they were going to have to say about the copy of Bitoku that they were trading to me. So they went through their list of games they were giving up, and they'd be like, oh, we really like this game, but just have too many games like it. And then the next game, they're like, this game's really fun, but we thought we just played it enough and stuff like that. And then they got to Bitoku, and I'm all excited to hear what they have to say. And they say something along the lines of like, we just didn't like it. I was like, great. Anyway, that said, I was really excited to play Bitoku. All I really knew about it going in was that it had some worker placement elements to it, and that it was a pretty big, lavish experience. So I was pumped up. So let's talk about the lavish. I know the art has been a little divisive, at least as far as how it applies to the board, and I can understand that. A lot of people have called the board busy, and I think that's certainly true at first glance. There's a lot of art and a lot of little symbols and locations all over the board, and it can certainly look confusing and overwhelming. On the other hand, I will say that it does, as you might expect, make sense pretty quickly after you've played a round or two. Also, I love the way the game handles different player counts. Again, at least as far as the board is concerned. The board has these recessed areas in places where player count is applicable. So if you're playing with 3 players instead of 4, for example, you just pop out a piece here and there, flip them over, pop them back in, and you're good to go at the different player count. So I really, really like the way they handle that. I mentioned that I didn't think the board is as confusing as it initially might make the game appear, and I think that's true. But on the other hand, I have to say that I do think the rulebook doesn't exactly help. I can't quite place my finger on what my issue with the rulebook is precisely, but they just seem to have written it out in a very expansive way. I don't know. I mean, like, it's understandable because this is a relatively heavy game with a lot of things going on. It just felt long and a bit harder to reference than I'd expected. But aside from a few moments in the game where I found myself hunting for clarifications, it wasn't that much of a hurdle or an issue for me, but I can see that potentially being an intimidating hurdle for those approaching the game. Anyway, on to the game.
I'm reminded of something really quick, Mark.
Yes.
I'm reminded of something which is skimming the rulebook right now, which is it starts with a, by the way, this is a very heavy game, and you might want to make sure you follow, like, which is always a good sign at the beginning of the rulebook.
Right. Yeah. On to the game. As I mentioned, it is worker placement. or more accurately, dice placement game with a couple of pretty interesting twists as far as that's concerned. So on your turn, you'll have the choice of doing one of three things. The first is playing a card from your hand to your personal board, which will generally let you acquire a resource or something, but will also unlock one of your personal dice. The second thing you can do, once one of your 3 personal dice has been unlocked in this fashion, is to place that die onto one of a few spots on the board. And there, the number of pips on the die will determine how much of a benefit you get from that spot. Most of the spots where you place these dice will be on one bank of this river that is beautifully drawn, as is everything in this game. The artwork is lovely, very colorful, very vibrant. But you're going to place all your dice initially on one bank of the river. Which brings me to the third and final thing you can do on your turn, which is to cross the river with one of your dice that you've placed on the board earlier, moving them across this river, which will lower the value of the die. You sort of take a hit on the value of the die, but allows you to move into a new worker placement spot where you can do something else. And so this is a sort of cool aspect of the game where you have these 3 classes of actions to do. The card play versus dice placement versus dice movement. And you don't necessarily need to do them in that order. You can like play 2 cards and then unlock 2 dice and then play a die and then play your 3rd card. You don't have to do them in that sequential order. So it's sort of interesting to figure out which path you're going to be taking when it comes to playing all your actions. You're doing all this, surprise, surprise, in order to get points. And man, are there ways to get points in Bitoku. You'll score points from gathering the titular Bitoku cards, which you'll acquire during the game. You place them alongside your personal board, and then you can walk one of your meeples down this path that you've created with your Bitoku cards and get stuff and get points throughout the game. In addition to that, you get points from getting different suits of Bitoku cards at the end of the game. You'll get points from up to 5 different tracks based on how far you move along them compared to your opponents. Movement along these tracks can be picked up in a number of ways throughout the game. So that's another way you get points. You get points by acquiring these Awakuru rocks throughout the game, which you'll place them on your personal board, and you'll score points based on the number of matching things you've accomplished. So for example, if I have a rock that says I score points for red and yellow buildings, I score extra points for red and yellow buildings that I've built throughout the game. You'll score points for visions you've accomplished, which are recipe cards, recipe fulfillment. There's a bunch of opportunities to get these cards that will score you at the end of the game if you've acquired or accomplished everything on the card, and you'll score those again at the end of the game, or potentially lose points if you don't get them fulfilled, sort of like Great Western Trail. You'll also score points for parts of your personal board that you've uncovered, as well as your remaining resources. And that's not even talking about all the points you can get throughout the course of the game for building buildings, for sending your pilgrim meeples along a number of tracks through a bunch of different ways. So if you're wondering what that leafy thing in your mouth is, that's right, it's a point salad. Kellen, were you wondering what that leafy thing in your mouth was?
Oh, you put that there?
Look, I generally don't have a problem with point salads. There are a lot of Felds, the king of point salads, that I enjoy. That said, to overly extend this metaphor, I don't think all the preparation for this salad is worth it. It's like if someone invited you to a salad-centered dinner. Great, I'm down. I could handle that. But then like after 2 hours of cutting and mixing and doing whatever you do to a salad, and then at the end you get the salad and it's a fine salad. It's a totally fine salad.
And then someone's like, "Do you got any meat here? You got any bacon to go
Right.
with this?"
No, it's like a green salad. Like, did I necessarily want to prepare this salad for 2 hours? Probably not. I could definitely see myself eating a salad that was worth the 2 hours, but this is not that salad. So it's felt like a sort of like more is more take on point salad game. And look, if you love point salads, then you very well might love this. I can see that. And this game isn't bad. It's just that after we finished, a game which I won, so this isn't even colored by me getting crushed or something. It just felt like I didn't see very much that I hadn't seen before, aside from that clever type of ways that you take your actions that I mentioned earlier. But if that mechanism was in like a 60-minute game, I would have enjoyed my time way more. For all that's going on, I just felt like I'd seen it all before, and the game had this curve where while you felt like you were getting stronger and stronger as you were going along, it felt like everyone was doing the same, and it felt like the resources that had been tight early in the game, by the end of the game, were like super easy to get, and it felt like everybody was sitting on this surplus of resources that felt wasted. It's like, okay, you get 2 resources. Which ones do you want from this spot? And you're like, I don't care. Whatever's closest to you, just hand me a rock and a whatever. So at the end, people just didn't care about all this excess they were getting. So in the end, I think if you're a big fan of point salad games and want a bigger experience, I can see you liking this. Even if you're just a fan of like big Euro games, you might want to give it a try. But as far as my copy of Bitoku, I think it's going to be suffering the same fate as it did for Monique and Naveen and evidently Neelan as well. So if you want it and you're going to Shucks 2022 and you've joined the math trade, you'll be able to get a copy of Bitoku.
Yeah, I had imagined I was going to get around to a second game of this before delivering a verdict, but the reality is, like, I didn't feel excited to. Like, after that first game, I kind of felt like I knew the rhythms of it, and yeah, it's a shame because it was on my anticipation list. Like, I was excited for it, but I can't think of a game other than maybe Boon Lake in recent memory that I was just more whelmed by. I was like, oh, this was fine, but I knew what it was, and I wasn't excited to experience more of it. And it's a shame because I think it is lovely, but it's too much. It is too much lovely and not enough bacon.
But it's Japanese themed.
There is that.
So how is the PI on this game?
Pass interference? Football season. What? What is by PI?
Private investigators.
You don't know what PI means?
Neelan says it's private investigators.
He would think that because he goes to salad parties. Player interaction.
Oh.
The PI.
The classic PI. Pretty much non-existent.
Yeah.
But I want to play this. I'll trade you for it.
No, never play this, Kellen. Never play this. Kellen, look me in the eye and promise me you'll never play this. Because this is not a Kellen game.
I can't trust either of you because you both agreed to attend salad parties.
Look, I will play this game with you with the caveat that as soon as you want to stop playing it, we stop playing it immediately because I just want to know what your threshold is. Because
when's the tipping point?
I cannot imagine a world where Kellen will like this game. I cannot envision that world. It's a fine game. It's not the worst game in the world. This is not a Kellen game.
All right. Well, the cover has me wishing, and then I read a review that said if you know some Japanese that might actually help you in this English game, and I was like, okay. That's weird.
So that is Bitoku by German Milan and Devere Games.
San Francisco is a brand new game from Reiner Knizia, and this was sent to us as a review copy by Rebel Studio, which is a Polish studio whom I was amused to find out at Gen Con consider Portal Games to be sort of friendly rivals of theirs as like the big board game publisher to beat in Poland, as it were. But Rebel Studio is a fairly new outfit, and we're always excited about a Reiner Knizia game. So I was intrigued to pick this up. It promised a interesting sort of bidding system for acquiring cards which go into districts of your little section of San Francisco. The way that the turns break down in this is you're either going to be drawing a card from a deck and placing it into one of three, let's call them hops. Little columns of cards.
We'd love to call it that.
Or, alternatively, you can take all of the cards in one of those columns, but only if there are more cards in that column than you have contracts. Now, the contracts are what you gain anytime you take one of these columns of cards, and all they serve to do is act as a limiter for when you're allowed to then take more cards. So if I take one column, I gain a contract. I can now only take a column when it hits 2 cards or more. The last little twist to this is once everyone has at least one contract, you all lose one. So, there's a limiting factor on how many you can get, and there will always be someone that has 0 contracts. But otherwise, the game sort of plays out in this kind of, pull a card. Oh, do I think that Kellen is going to want this card looking at his districts? Maybe I'll put it into a pile that's like less enticing for him. A little bit like Colorado's style. What you're ultimately doing with these cards is placing them into rows where they match their color in order to build value in that row. Because whoever has the most value in every given row at the end of the game is going to get a bonus, and whoever is the least is going to be losing points, in fact. You're also incentivized to create clusters of value around foundations in order to get skyscrapers, which are worth a point. Whoever has the most skyscrapers is also going to get an additional bonus point. If you fill out your rows, you're going to get bonus points. And there are little other bonuses along the way by sort of collecting symbols. There's a whole trolley network thing you can do where having the most trolleys is actually going to be worth a chunk of points. And I say a chunk of points like this is a fairly low scoring game. We're talking about, 10 points is a winning score. So every little point you get, every bonus point feels pretty important. But the game kind of lives and dies on this central mechanism of pulling cards, playing them into columns, and deciding whether taking a column and gaining a contract, which is going to limit you in further turns, is worth that trade-off. And I hate to say that I kind of feel like it crumbles on this mechanic a little bit, because there are maybe far too frequent turns where, because of how many contracts you have, all you're able to do is pull a card and place it. And sometimes that decision isn't that interesting, unless you're really, really invested in sort of trying to analyze the next player ahead of you and trying to figure out exactly what the best combination of cards may be for them. It kind of just felt a little bit like you were playing a little bit arbitrarily most of the time. And it lent itself to what felt like very distinct, like turn order problems, where based on whom you were following and based on what that player did, there were just sometimes obvious plays. Like the most disappointing thing would happen fairly frequently would be someone playing a card because they had no option, and then the next player just grabbing that card because it was an obviously great card for them. And that sequence of 2 turns isn't interesting. That's not a great decision for either of those players, but it happened more often than not. That said, I did enjoy building out the city, like the considerations about where you're going to be building value and competing on each of the rows. I liked that part of it. I just kind of wished that this had a more exciting bidding system. You know, like it reminded me a little bit, even in the anticipation of it, of something like Electropolis, but that bidding system is so much better. Everything about Electropolis works really well because the auction system is so good, whereas it just felt like it was crippling San Francisco. Kellen, what was your take on San Francisco? You played this with me.
I did. I was tricked into it. No, it's a Reiner Knizia game. Of course I want to play it. It's sort of like taking Colorado, right, which is like a top 10 board game of all time, and then making it exceedingly mediocre. Yeah. And you're like, doctor, what's going on? Do you need to see a doctor? No, it didn't feel like there were many substantive decisions in terms of seeding the hops. There's something fun about the spatial puzzle of you must start on the left and build this way, and you can never go back or change that up. But more often than not, your turn was just flip over a card and put it in like literally one spot, because putting it in any other spot would be stupid. Just like really stupid. It was almost like I felt like the market could be refilled by bots somehow, like some element of randomness, and the game wouldn't change. And so, perhaps it was my expectation, right? Because that is what Colorado is that, oh my God, I can't put this here because that's going to happen here. And there wasn't one turn or one moment ever where I got that feeling that I get in Colorado, one of my favorite games.
Yeah, I would mostly agree with that. It's a very hard thing where you have a game that you're comparing something to, and you just feel like all of the changes feel just like make it worse. Because the joy of Colorado is it's a game you can bust out anywhere, teach to anyone, and the simple pass or play mechanic makes the game flow really, really smoothly. But as soon as you layer all these additional things on top of it, and even just the simple addition of like that contract limiting thing, just felt like a worse system overall. I get what the good doctor was trying to do, but it just didn't make for a more fun game. It made for a more frustrating one, and that was frustrating to see.
And it's like in Colorado, right? If you're out of the round, you're out of the round, but you are paying attention to what colors everyone wants. In this game, not only is it what colors does everyone want, but how many contracts do they have, and what does that allow them to buy? But again, that's a lot of processing for what amounts to like almost 50% non-decision every turn.
Totally. One of the things which will become relevant later in the episode is I enjoyed this slightly more at less players than more, because it kind of felt like almost that little thing about when you play a game 2-player and all you have to consider is one opponent in those things. I don't know that this game would work at 2 players, but at 4 it just kind of felt like you couldn't actively pay attention to everyone's combination on their tableau to the extent to like play it effectively, whatever that would even mean in the context of this. So it just kind of fell apart for me, unfortunately. I didn't hate it. I just thought it was aggressively average.
I think it's notable, and I don't know why it's notable, but I'm going to note it anyway because it's notable. Everything in the game scores you 1 point, 2 points, or -1 points if you're in last place. And for whatever reason, there is one thing that scores you 2.5 points. So, and like the end of the game scores like 10 to 8.5 to 6 to 5. Can you explain this to me, Mark? What's the deal here?
I cannot explain it to you, but I would never question the doctor's math.
It was a little bit odd.
You're siding with the doctor, Mark?
Always.
Yeah, you did score 4.5 points in the game.
But yeah, that is San Francisco by Reiner Knizia and Rebel Studio.
I had a chance to play a game called Caesar's Empire. And this is a game that Neelan and I played an entire game of as a demo at Gen Con at 3 players. And then I immediately purchased it. And it is a redo of a game from 2020 called, oh dear, Drogi do Raizmu. So that happened. But this is a route building game that is 30 minutes long for 2 to 5 players, set in the world of Asterisk, which... Oh, did I say it wrong?
Well, it's Asterix, which is an important distinction because that's kind of the running joke of the comic, but I'm going to let it slide.
Wait, the running joke of the comic is that people...
They change all the
Aster-
SKs to X's, so it's like Obelix versus Obelisk.
Oh, okay.
Vital statistics instead of statistics.
Oh, this is like frack instead of...
Yeah, except for 10-year-olds, but sure.
Okay. Well, in Caesar's Empire, actually, I talked about this briefly on a patron-only episode. Neelan and I had a fantastic game at 3 players. A fantastic game. So I was excited to bring this to a game night. It's 30 minutes long. It's route building. It feels like Ticket to Ride. And we played a 5-player game. In Caesar's Empire, all you're doing, literally, is building out a road from Rome. And you are either placing 1 or 2 of your miniatures on the board to connect to a new city. And that city will give you victory points in the form of a random assortment of a point value. And you will also get a resource on that city, which is, again, also random. So how you score in the game is there are basically like 7 or 8 different city shapes with various values of points. And for each city, you will score the highest of that shape, meaning, there's a square 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all across the board. And if you get 2 of them, you're only going to score 1, which is that top one. So you're incentivized to go to sort of a variety of cities in areas. In addition to that, the resources will score you in kind of a novel way, which is that if you get a full set of all 8 resources, you're going to score a lot of points, sort of going up and up exponentially. But similarly, if you get all 4 of one resource, you're going to get a lot of points. And it's like really the exponential scale is busted, right? Which is 0 points for the first one, 2 points for the second one, 10 for the third one. And then if you get all 4, you get 20 points. So it's like really, busted. Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Mark. And in addition to that, there is one other resource, gold, which scales, I believe, even more exponentially going to the right. And then there's one final rule. And that final rule is that as you build outward, every turn you track back to Rome on a route, and everyone on that route will score 1 point. Meaning that I will jump on Mark's route because I really want that one square city tile that's a 7, or I really need that resource. So Mark has built out a road over a couple of turns, and there are 6 greens on it. I put 1 red 7, I score 1 point, Mark scores 6 points for that route. In addition, if you hit gold, that's doubled, so everyone scores double for that route. That is the entirety of how the game works. There's like no real placement rules. It's just go to a new city from an empty city or start from Rome, build out the roads all throughout the map. Rome's in the middle, and that's the game. And Neelan and I really loved this in the 25-minute 3-player version because you're paying attention to what everybody's doing. You're sort of balancing the resources versus the cities versus the routes. It is totally not good at 5. Oh, totally not good at 5.
Wow.
I am frustrated that I ever purchased it.
Wait, did it shake your confidence about how it would be at 3?
No.
Or
no. It's good at 3.
Yeah.
But it's like, if it doesn't work at 5, it's like I thought that this was going to be the player count for it, and I'll try it again at 4. The problem came that no one could collect because the amount of resources don't change. So to get all 4 of a resource is just never going to happen.
Right.
And so you get 0, 2, 10, and then everyone literally stop. There's 4 turns before it gets back to you, so everyone can conspire against you. So it made the route building kind of be the only thing that mattered. Okay. And again, it's so chaotic that by the time it gets back to you, you're not getting enough for the resources. So it just felt really, really random. What I will say is that it is very quick. It was almost, and this is a cardinal sin, I would say, is it almost took more time to set up than it did to play. It did not, but it was a super breezy. I love how fast it goes. I love the components. I don't love the world of asterisks because I prefer fracks to obelisks. But Neelan, you liked this at 3, right? We had a great time.
Yeah, no, look, I think it's the rare experience of sitting down at the demo table, not knowing what you're going to expect, walking away, like you said, 20 minutes later and being like, wow, we played a complete game and that was excellent. And for myself, who didn't know anything about this until I sat down at the table, it was the perfect introductory experience. And, like we alluded to on the bonus episode, something that I'm very excited to sit down with Mark and play. So yeah, no, I'm still encouraged. I'm definitely disappointed by that player count loss of flexibility. It makes me wonder why the game goes to 5.
Yeah. Well, it's also so simple that it's like almost scary. I fear that our game of this is going to turn into Archipelago, where it's like Mark has 3 grapes and then it's Neelan's turn and Neelan's like, you, Kellen, you have to get the grape and then you do something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like so on the board that it really could devolve into just like, that's 12 points, that's 8 points, you do it, got. But under that, guys, it's like it has this sort of like Ticket to Ride, but with, even less rules overhead. Boom, 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 boom. And like, I'm like, wow, this is really cutthroat. So I enjoy it a lot at 3 players. But
it actually, now that I think about it, reminds me at least a little bit of Blue Lagoon, right? In that thing you kind of just said, where it's like, if you can see someone is building towards the thing that they've been building for, it's up to someone to step in and stop them. And there is a little bit of who is more incentivized to do that. And yeah, I think that's the aspect of it that I think was really enticing about it when we played it. And again, yeah, excited to try it again.
Yep. And that is Caesar's Empire.
So before we move on in the middle here, let's talk about some upcoming stuff. As you might know by now, we're going to be at Shucks. This is in Vancouver, the Shut Up and Sit Down Expo, one of our favorite shows of the year and one that we're excited to have been invited back to this year. We're actually going to be on 3 different panels this year, which is super exciting. We're going to be doing a live record of the podcast with the Demon Imp Child that is Tom of Shut Up and Sit Down. We're also going to be on a panel with So Very Wrong About Games, Mike Walker and Mark Bigney. And we're also going to be doing a little game show one of the nights with the Shut Up and Sit Down crew. So if you're excited by any of that, please check out the website, shutupandsitdown.com, find the event schedule, and if you're going to be attending, please come see us there. Come hang out with us.
Yeah.
We always love playing games with our listeners, and this will be no exception.
Especially you're at such a game-playing focused convention as Shucks is.
Yeah.
Did you get the dates right, Neelan? Because last week I made it seem like Shucks was 10 months long.
I have not yet, but yes, let me get... What is the actual date?
I don't even know how that's possible to have mishapped a 10-month long.
I didn't even notice that you had done it myself.
Yeah, I didn't know. I did the editing. I didn't notice you'd done it. What did you say? I didn't hear it.
I didn't go back.
Oh,
I've just been told by like 4 people because I never go back.
That's right.
Yeah, those dates are actually the 30th of September to October 2nd. So that weekend, see us there in Vancouver. Let's move on to our feature this week, which is a hot question.
There you go.
And this hot question is the following. You guys ready?
Ready.
It's just awe-inspiring. You know those things that just actually inspire awe? Like Neelan does that in the mic. There's no post-processing.
Yeah, totally. That is just in person, live, and I am incredible at it. Okay, this is important. I want you to give me your answer to this as close to off the top of your head as possible. Okay?
We should do it simultaneously.
Ooh, yeah. I guess as soon as you have your number, I just want you to say it. Removed from all other considerations, like in ideal circumstances, etc., what is the best player count?
Okay, I have my number.
For all board games.
For all board games.
Okay, I have my number.
Okay. You going to say it together?
Yeah.
We're all gonna say it
I
together?
mean, you're going to answer. What do you mean, Tony?
Yeah, of course. We're all going to say it together.
All right. Yeah. And then we have to explain ourselves.
3, 2, 1.
3.
5.
Okay, so I said 3.
Interesting.
What was yours, Kellen?
5.
Neelan?
I said 3.
Okay. 3
I'm
games,
actually
3
surprised that there were no 4s in there, which I think is generally considered to be a strong player count. Let's start with the Divergent. Kellen, tell me about 5.
I like being the Divergent, though. Someone yesterday at game night thought that Neelan and I were like an old married couple after Time's
Wait, who
Up.
said that? I haven't heard
They were
this
saying we
story.
were on the same wavelength during Time's Up. That we
Oh,
were
that's
like,
right. Yeah, we were. We were like nailing that. It was pretty
we
great.
did lose by like 50 points, but
Yeah.
okay, so 5. Here's the thing, right? Board games for me are a social experience. Okay, I get it. 4. The problem with 5 traditionally is the Euro game that is like actually for 4 players, but also goes to 5, and suddenly it goes from 2.5 hours to 3.5 hours, and then you have a problem. But the issue with 4 is the social dynamic. So the type of games that I like encourage alliances and betrayals, and a 2v2 is just not interesting enough. It's like often it like breaks down into that sort of I'm on this side, I'm on that side. With 5, you have the swing vote or the Divergent, which is a position that I often want to be in. This is different than the position of being a plower, which is apparently something else I enjoy doing. No, 5 for me is just, it's sort of like I like being at the party, but it can't be too crazy of a party because then, I get lost in my own brain. With 5, you've got this scaling of like party games. It's the perfect player count for me.
I think one of the things that's interesting is the reason I didn't choose 4 when I was thinking about this question earlier.
I thought you were going to go with 1.
Oh, how dare you. The reason I think 4 is a little bit funky is exactly the same thing, right? Which is like, I remember almost any area control like game we've played, it's like one person is fighting one person and I'm fighting Mark on this side of the map, and it's like you're just waiting to see who the winner of each of those 2 fights are. And I think that the problem is that 5 doesn't always, in my head, doesn't solve that problem because that 5th player can kind of just keep themselves occupied while those 2 pairs are like occupied with each other. Whereas in 3, it becomes very immediately obvious that someone is being left out of the action, and that is a problem. I know that not all games solve with this like really, really well. Like I think like the 3-player problem is almost like a very common problem that area control games have, for example. But I also just think that what you gain in terms of like game length, the distance between your turns, and that sort of thing is just generally so much nicer at 3.
Yeah, that's basically what it is for me. Like, area control issues aside, which there are when it comes to larger player counts or uneven player counts versus even player counts, as Kellen and you have mentioned. But for Euro games or for other types of games, I typically want, when I'm playing a 2-player game, to play a game that's constructed for 2 players specifically. And generally, I'm not really looking for that. I'm looking for multiplayer games. And then when it comes to multiplayer games, yeah, it's great to have more people to like relate to or talk to in the social aspect that Callan's referring to. But like, I will trade some of that for quicker turns, quicker player counts. And just that's why I just feel like 3 is ideal for me. You get the multiplayer experience, but as quick as it can be done, basically.
Right.
It's just that I find that people who, if you had to ask like, if you had to ask me like typify all of the people up through the ranges, like 3 would be some form of try hard, right? Because it's sort of like 4-player,
Okay,
the people who you're
classify every player.
No.
Who's the 1 player?
Yeah. Let's keep working up through, let's work up through the things.
The thing is like the player who plays a 4-player game and says, "Oh my God, I just prefer this at 3. There's so much more control." I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, but your guy is the guy at a 4-player game who's like, yeah, but this would be way more interesting if it was at 5. So don't bring your 4 guy into my 3 game, and I'll keep your 5 guy out of my 4 game.
I don't know what you're saying, Mark, but I don't agree.
As you sort of laid out the benefits of the 5 when it comes to like party games and larger games like social deduction, I did have a little pang of I lose all of my social deduction games at 3 effectively, which is definitely a hard pill to swallow. But I'm very much at the point now when whenever we are talking about heavier Euros, and even if it's a game I love, even if we're talking about it, A Feast for Odin or Through the Ages, I'm very reticent to play it at 4 players. I think that I would almost always prefer 3 players to 2 players, and it's just hard to justify what you gain in player interaction at 4 versus what you add in length. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny because like I'm always intrigued by a game that supports 5, but I mean, I guess case in point with Caesar's Empire, right? I don't necessarily always think that they work best at that count, but yeah,
I think it's
I
also,
get the argument.
No. And it's like what type of games you prefer. And modern
of course,
Euro games are complicated as and
Totally.
so they don't support 4 players anymore, even though they say they do. Kind of, right? Like the length becomes such an issue that it makes more sense at 3. I get that.
Yeah.
And for me, basically, like it would come down to, generic game that says it's best at 1 versus generic game that says best at 2 versus 3 versus 4 versus 5. Like generic game that says it's best at 5, that just sort of narrows the field so much to me. Like I can see maybe like the best experiences being good games that are best at 5, but like with 5 it has to be quick. I would prefer a smaller set of rules just because everybody needs to get it and stuff like that. So just like it sort of dismisses a bunch of games. And again, if you can hit that 5, great, then maybe that's the best experience of all the generic numbers of player counts. But it feels like a very specific target to aim for.
Narrow.
I will say this also, part of what fuels this for me is for some reason, and this is just a weird quirk of the way that my brain works, because it's such an uncommon player count to be supported very well, I'm always excited when a game is designed around 3 players, and they're very, very rare. But for example, we just recently received Star Trek Ascendancy, and that is designed, at least in the base game, as a 3-player game, and I've always been excited by the idea of that, like, designing a fighty interactive game around that as a player count is just, it's something about it is just so, like, enticing to me. Like even like 3 Kingdoms, which we've spoken about playing for like a while now and haven't gone around to, it's just such a neat concept to like say, hey, this is a war fighty game, but this is the count that we think it works best at.
I'm sort of speaking out of ignorance here, which I'm sure I'm wont to do quite a bit, but I have to say that I am worried when I hear about a game that's made exactly for 3. And there are a bunch that I want to play. You mentioned 3 Kingdoms. Churchill is a game I've always wanted to play, which is a war game based exactly for 3. But I worry that those games are so built around the balance between the 3 that that'll be like the crux of it. Again, I'm speaking as a person who's not played many of them, but that's always been my worry. Again, I still want to play them, but I'm just worried that like, okay, if this game is built exactly for 3 and only 3, is this like where balance is paramount and everybody has to be playing to keep everybody else in check? That's my little bit of a concern at only 3 player counts.
I can see that, but to some extent, I think that's the part of it that like excites me. So for instance, like having played War of the Ring, the card game, very recently, it got me intrigued by the idea of exploring like Ian Brody's previous stuff with Quartermaster General. And I know that the thing that people say with that series is, hey, pick the version of the game that you have the player count that best supports it. And I think that's something that the 3 of us should probably try at some point. So Quartermaster General, the Cold War, is the version of that is designed around 3 players, where I'm just like, man, I'm now excited to pick that up, because what does that mean to take like a game and very specifically design it around that player count? Like it's just something that's like very, very interesting to me from like the design side of my brain. Okay, so follow on quick. We have to put all of the player counts, every possible player count, in order.
Let's say up to what? Up to 6?
Yeah, up to 5. Up to
okay.
5, right? We could agree that 3 is the best.
Okay, yeah, I would have 3.
2 to 1. Then 5.
My second one I'm going to say is 4.
I can get behind the more argument. I like the idea of 5. I don't know why, but again, I'm just intrigued by other player counts.
Okay, Cal, how about you? What's your second? You're finally on the 3 train?
Mark, I'm going to make this really simple.
Great, thank you. Go for it.
It's going to go 5, 4, 3,
Oh,
2, and then 0, because I'd rather be doing anything else than playing a solo board game.
okay.
Perfect. Yep. I think we nailed that. That is going to do it for this hot question. I would love to hear everyone out there's opinion on what they think. And remember, the intent is just don't think about specific games in your library. What's a player count that you feel most comfortable at? We'd love to hear your shout outs in the Discord. Hit us up in the podcast channel. You can get there if you're not familiar with what our Discord is. It's a online chat community, somewhere between a forum and a chat room. I guess it's basically a chat room. You can go there at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord. Lots of great people in there, incredible community of people that are super helpful and always keen to play online games if you're looking to play stuff on Board Game Arena. head on over to boardgamebarrage.com/Discord. Otherwise, you can find us on all of our social media, whether that's on Twitter, whether that's on Facebook, whether that's on Instagram. You can search for Board Game Barrage and you'll get taken there. Thank you, as always, to Heart Society for our intro and outro music. What's in your mind, kid? Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.
It's CAE, right? CAE.
CAE. Is that how you spell Caesar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Yep. And the German version of Caesar is Kaiser. K-A.
What? Is this Doug Peterson trivia?
Okay, ready. 2:44.
Mark,
Hello, everyone.
Mark, are you typing a novel right now?
Yeah, I am typing a novel. It's called The History of Kellen and all his great exploits.
You dual task novel writing and podcast recording at once, like a savant?
I'm actually triple tasking right now. I'm thinking about something very important as well as typing and podcasting, but I can't tell you what it is.
Are you a gardener or are you a discoverer in your novel writing?
Am I a gardener or a discoverer? Okay,
Yeah.
so tell me the difference here.
No, that's not it.
Yeah, it is. What are you talking about? Yes, it is.
It's not discoverer, is it?
I mean, explorer. They're
Well,
all
I
the
mean,
same.
that's what I mean. The two words are very specific.
Isn't it like,
Alan.
would it be sower
It's like
and
a
reaper?
pruner or...
A pruner?
I think
Like
it's
the
pruner,
juice?
isn't it?
No.
Yeah.
It's nothing like
Yeah.
that. Mark.
I thought it was that.
Mark.
Pruner versus...
It's not a pruner. It's definitely gardener.
Plowers versus pruners.
No.
Plowers versus
Yep.
pruner.
This is the British
Plowers
version.
versus okay,
Stop.
hold on.
You're
That's-
totally
Wait,
wrong.
plower versus pruner. Neelan, what are you? Plower or pruner?
I'm a plower all the way.
I'm a plower too. How about you?
I don't even know what this is anymore. I've never written a
Plowers
novel.
versus pruners. What is it? What are you?
It has nothing to do. He's making this shit up, okay? I
No,
just
that's
Googled
it.
it. It doesn't even come up.
You liar. You're seeing all the same
The
links.
sad thing is that I just asked you a simple question: are you a plower or a pruner? And you can't answer me straight.
I don't like it when my bits get turned around on me.
Okay.